Welcome. We are together today with Reverend Nathan Brooks and Brenda Brooks, who were long time in ministry here. I appreciate both the official role, but I also am the daughter of a mother who was partner to a pastor, and I know what kind of ministerial role that is, so I appreciate both of those. And we thought we'd take a minute on the event of this anniversary to hear from Nathan and Brenda. And the question I'm just kind of opening up for them is, when they came here as young people and were building something here at Peakland, what was it they were trying to build for the church and for the Lynchburg community? And how did they see that fulfilled inside their work and in those years? So welcome and thank you for being with us for this anniversary service. It's good to have you.
Glad to be here.
Very excited to be here, and I thank you for your invitation, particularly on the 66th anniversary. I thought that this would be the ideal church day for me to return and be a part of your fellowship here. Because we had 33 of those years, wonderful experience here at Peakland.
Yeah, well, and 33 years is, it's a couple of generations. It's building from one generation to the next. It speaks to longevity, but also to achievement. Things were happening. So tell me whatever it is that you have to share with us about that.
Okay. Well, when we came, one of the things I did was to teach in the kindergarten, Sunday school, and Bible school when that happened. And at one point I did direct the junior choir and sang in the adult choir, I guess the entire 33 years. And I was a member of the Women's Christian Fellowship Evening Circle, and took some of our kids over to the Lodge of the Fishermen now and then to do singing and entertainment on, I guess that was Friday nights. And I helped at the Saturday afternoon bingo meeting of the blind group, which met through Kumbaya, and Sarah Osteen and John were leaders there, and I enjoyed working with them. Some other things that I did, we were blessed in this church to have Mrs. Mary Truitt Gillum, the daughter of Dr. George W. Truitt, Baptist hero, so to speak, from Texas. And she taught the women's Sunday school class, and was a fabulous teacher. And so when she passed, before she passed away, but after she had stopped teaching, I transcribed most of her lessons, and bless her heart, she was a wonderful Christian woman, but her writing was really hard to decipher sometimes. But anyway, the secretary, after I had typed up a lot, transcribed a lot, but then typed them up for us to have in a book here. So I was glad that we can have Mary Truitt Gillum's some of her lessons here. I remember Mrs. Margaret Shelton, who was one of the ladies who helped with the fellowship dinners, and she always wanted those dinners to just be perfect, and she did a good job with that. But
no paper plates or plastic spoons. It was a linen napkin. It was an actual plate.
Yeah, nice. Upscale.
Right, and forks and knives. From silverware. It was quite an event.
Nice.
But our time here was wonderful, and great friends, and lots of time for service, and So we're glad that you asked us to tell some things about it.
There were several things that drew me to Peakland. A year before the church called me, I was in a young people's retreat at no, it was down at the bridge, Natural Bridge, and a professor from Randolph-Macon, religion professor, and a distinguished biblical archaeologist was at that conference, and we struck up a friendship. After the conference, we came back to Lynchburg because we were friends with the chaplain, Bob Evans, and his wife Nancy then. We had been in seminary together, and so we had been visiting the Evans before Peakland was in the picture, but it just happened that on that particular night, the professor from Randolph-Macon and Bob Evans, the chaplain, took me over to Arthur Brown, our first minister, Arthur Brown's house, and he brought us over and took us on a tour of the building, which he was very proud of because this building was constructed during Arthur's ministry. And Bob Evans asked me as we left, how would you like to be the pastor of this church? I said, it'd be fabulous. I said, first of all, the beauty of the setting and the building are just breathtaking. And I said, and he knew that Arthur Brown was moving into the poverty program in Roanoke and would be leaving. And it just so happened that both Frank and Bob wrote letters to the pulpit committee on my behalf, having met me one time.
Wow.
At Natural Bridge. And so anyhow, the committee came and I began to explore coming here. And two things that were very important to me. First of all, Peakland had this American Baptist affiliation, and all the churches in the D.C. area and the surrounding Maryland who were affiliated with the D.C. Baptist Convention were duly aligned with American Baptists and Southern Baptists. And so I would like the fact that Peakland had an American Baptist connection, because that was where my ordination was. And Peakland was only one of two churches in Virginia that had that affiliation. That is, two predominantly white churches. The rest of them were African American. And of course, that led to some controversy because not everybody at Peakland was ready to jump on board with the integration. But it was the ecumenical openness to both American and Southern Baptists that I appreciated. And then the Thanksgiving Day service with Agudath Shalom, Church of the Covenant, First Christian Church, and later other churches joined. This congregation had an ecumenical and an interfaith perspective, and that was just where I was, right in my own spiritual journey. I had trained as a pastoral counselor. That was my specialty. And so coming here, I was interested in our church, learning to offer pastoral care to one another and to the larger community. And so developing the caring aspect, we started birthdays and anniversary celebrations as a way of pulling everybody together. And then the church was heavily involved in the what is the Lynchburg Covenant Fellowship now, but the day camp, Camp Kumbaya. We were involved not only providing our children as campers, but providing the transportation, bringing inner city children out to the camp, taking them home in the afternoon. So the church was heavily involved in those kind of outreaches to the community. And the whole community was going through a transition in race relations. There was no public library at the time, and students were not permitted to go to the Memorial Library. The African Americans were not. And so there were strategies that were developed to get the books that the African American students needed so that they could study their lessons, even though they were not welcomed at the Memorial Library. So we saw a lot of transition over those 33 years in the community, from really being polarized around race, and there was a lot of mean-spirited feelings in the community around that. But Peakland was more progressive and more open, and we had faculty from Randolph-Macon in the church, Mary Frances Thielen taking books to the students who were arrested at the drugstores down to the jail, so they wouldn't get behind in their lessons. And so the church was very involved in the civil rights movement. And of course, American Baptists, not Southern, but American Baptists, were very invested in the civil rights program.
Who are you in Haywood, which you worked out with a little bit?
Haywood was the pastor at Diamond Hill Baptist, and I remember when we invited him to our home for a meal for the first time. We had the meal before dark, but he didn't show up till after dark in our neighborhood. He was very careful about coming into the neighborhood as an African American. But
in your house.
We cultivated a friendship, and we had exchanges. I had a group from Peakland that would meet with in the home of one of his members, and then we would invite his group over to meet with our members, so that we began to build up some relationships, some friendships between African Americans and Peakland's white Baptists. What I had figured out was all these people on Peakland Place had maids and yard men, and downtown all the businesses had African Americans they employed, but there was no place that you met peer to peer. And I thought it's the absence of experience, because there's a lot of goodwill between the people that work for you or who raised your children, and literally some of these African American women raised the children of Peakland Baptist Church. And so I knew there was a goodwill there, and we were trying to build on that, but to give them an experience of peer-to-peer. And one of my personal satisfactions was 10 years later, Haywood Robinson and Jim Candler, a member of this congregation, were chair and co-chair of the not only the hospital, but also the Board of Education. So that they had a history with each other, and here they were in the time of integration, paired in these important community missions. So that was a joy for me to see happen. The other thing I would say, I wanted the church to be good at pastoral care, but I also liked the fact that we had a lot of theological diversity within the congregation. Peakland was a sort of a halfway house for Episcopalians marrying Baptists, or from other denominations, and that we could provide a more formal. We were high Baptists, we had a robe, we had a stole, and we had a liturgy. so that it wasn't too far removed from if you were Episcopalian or Catholic.
Right.
And of course, we had one Jew who was a member, who was active and part of our congregation. So all of that created a wonderful theological atmosphere for conversation.
Yeah.
And these things just really pulled me in. And so we had a lot of people involved with city council, with the public schools, and with other ministries in the community. And so what we try to do is to think of that and to honor these people as our missionaries going out to the community.
Yeah.
And bearing their witness in these secular contexts. And people like Ken Wolin, who helped put together the alternative for race relations, was the Martin Luther King Center for Human Rights at the public library. We had 3 Peakland members on that board. And I was on the board, and what I would do is go with the members to support their ministry in the community.
Yeah.
And so I had participation in the development of the Lynchburg Covenant Fellowship, the development of the Martin Luther King Center for Human Rights, and I could go on and on. But anyhow, I refer to Peakland as my Camelot experience because I love being here, and we did have a lot of controversy, over affiliation with American Baptist Churches of the South, which was predominantly African American, and there were other controversies. But I had a lot of freedom in the pulpit. It was I was never attacked or got into controversy over what I wanted to preach, and I didn't always experience that in the Southern Baptist churches that I grew up in. So this was very refreshing to me. I could say more, but that gives you a feel.
Yeah, and I will say that, so what I'm hearing, we're at this point where race relations, interfaith relations, and care are the keys to this moment right now, the moment we're in 2021. And so, to hear you talk about that, some of them are things I hadn't known details of, but to hear you talk about these things tells me the grounding that's here at Peakland puts us in a good place to move forward. These are not new topics for us. This is not new ground. It may be that, we haven't talked about it openly for a little while, but we have good ground on which to build, and good practices. Like, if you spent 30 years working to build a care element, a care ethic in the church, I feel that it's still here. I feel it's still here, and that's what we go forward on. That's what we lean on. So, I didn't even mention that Peakland was the founding member of the of Pastoral Counseling Services of Central Virginia, and a core of Interfaith Outreach, of getting Interfaith Outreach Association going. Which what would have happened in this city if Interfaith Outreach Association had not been present in the past year? I can't even imagine. It was the most important interfaith initiative we had in town. It's churches learning to work together, and not just for their denominational projects, but for the community. For the good of the community. Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you for sharing those stories, and for there's no way to thank you for all those years. I know that it's a mutual thing, but thanks for celebrating this and for giving us a moment to celebrate in the midst of all we're going through. Having this time to celebrate is really special, so thank you. And thank you as well.